Tonight, a duel between an 11-year-old girl and a pair of predators.
There is life after something tragic.
Jaycee Dugard, kidnapped by a convicted pedophile, handcuffed, imprisoned, his drug-fueled binges. A man who said he heard voices in the wall. An 11-year-old girl, 18 years in hell, and over again, she would be betrayed by a justice system supposed to protect her. Lessons from a child held prisoner in a maze of shacks by a deranged pedophile, whose wife would take him to sing at children's playgrounds. How did she fight her way out of 18 years of mind control?
How did you stay sane?
2 babies born to a child who had no medical care in a backyard. 2 babies she loves.
I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I had somebody that was mine. I wasn't alone.
And tonight we go in search of the answer. How did parole officers miss her 60 times? You'll see tonight for the first time video obtained by the prosecutor, a parole officer coming to the sex offender's house and never rescuing a girl just a few feet away. Chris Cuomo investigates.
Mr. Mesner, we just want to ask you a question. They hear a report that there are kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all. That's what I don't get. It seems impossible to common sense.
And there is someone else at the center of this story, a mother with a broken heart and strength of steel who will never give up. Her challenge to law enforcement tonight, and the story of the day her baby finally comes home.
I remember saying, come quick.
And I remember telling you, I'm coming, baby, I'm coming.
A stolen life, a child's courage, a mother's love, and victory achieved through the power of indestructible hope. She was a little girl with a name right out of a storybook, Jaycee Dugard, age 11 years old.
Hello?
A girl who loved her mom, her little sister, a cat named Monkey, and school and books and stories, and by holding on to the memory of everything she loved, survived and would triumph after a battle in a monstrous backyard, where a convicted sex offender let out of prison, Philip Garrido, and his wife Nancy, kidnapped her, handcuffed her, imprisoned her, had her give birth outside. And over again, the justice system would fail her. For 18 years, she was forbidden to say her own name, so this is how her book, A Stolen Life, begins.
Let's get one thing straight. My name is Jaycee Dugard. I was kidnapped by a stranger at age 11, and I want Philip Garrido to know that I no longer have to keep his secret. I was happy.
She is 31 years old. She looks impossibly young.
I know, I was worried about should I wear heels?
She is also someone who laughs a lot and has delight in ordinary things on ordinary days.
Oh
You
my
drive.
God, I do drive. I drive very safely.
You would never know what she survived,
Oh, my pine cone?
unless you notice how her face changes when she speaks of the past. And the charm around her neck, it's a pine cone.
Back then, it was the last thing I touched. You know, the last grip on me. Now it's a symbol of hope and new beginnings, and that there is life after something tragic.
And tonight, she says this is what she wants to do. She will not speak of every detail she has written in her book, but lessons of hope and survival, and what it meant to her to have a mother who would never let go. It is June 10th, 1991. Jaycee Dugard wakes up in this house in Lake Tahoe, California, where her family's moved because it's a safe place to live. She's in the 5th grade and remembers worrying about the field trip coming up because she's so shy. Remembers dressing in her favorite all-pink outfit. And she remembers the mom she absolutely adores had to leave early for her work as a typesetter at a print house and didn't keep a promise.
She said that she'd give me a kiss goodbye. She didn't. I wasn't mad. I just, thought I'd catch her when I got home, tell her, you got to give me a kiss next time,
She also remembers there was something she had wanted to ask her mom.
I wanted to ask my mom if I could shave for the field trip. You know.
Shave your legs?
Yeah.
Big question
Didn't want to be
for her.
embarrassed. Yeah. Didn't want to be embarrassed. So that was the big question on my mind.
She walks up the hill from the house to catch the school bus, the way her mother taught her, looking out for traffic.
Walked up the side of the hill. That was the safe way to go against traffic. And halfway up, my world changed in an instant. I thought, oh, somebody's looking for directions.
A gray car pulls up. A man rolls down the window.
Because what else would it be? And his hand shoots out, and I just feel numb. My whole body is tingly. I don't know what it's from. I fall back in the bushes.
She had been paralyzed by a stun gun.
I lost control of my bladder. I wasn't even embarrassed. No time to be embarrassed.
On the ground, the sharp edges of a pine cone are the last things she touches before she comes to, face down, on the floor in the back seat of a car.
I remember my throat felt very dry and scratchy and like I had been screaming, but I don't remember screaming.
The man behind the wheel is Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, supposedly monitored by parole officers and doctors. Holding her down on the floor is his wife, Nancy. The district attorney believes Nancy scouted this little girl for her husband as a prize.
Did they say anything? Did you hear anything?
No, not at first. After we were driving for a while, I heard the driver say, "I can't believe we got away with it." And he started laughing. I think I blacked out again or something. It was like the most horrible moment of your life times 10.
120 miles later, the car stops in front of this house on a neighborhood street. Garrido tells her to be quiet.
I said, I think it's probably one of the only things I said was, my family doesn't have a lot of money, they can't pay the ransom. That's what I kidnap as ransom, right? Yeah. No. Not always.
He is 40 years old, 6 feet 4 inches tall. She is 11, 4 feet 6, 80 pounds. He takes away the pink clothes she dressed in that morning. The only thing she has left is a little ring shaped like a butterfly. She will hide from him for 18 years. Blanket over her head, he walks her through a small area of grass toward a fence where an opening is concealed by a tarp. And hidden behind the fence, a deranged collection of sheds and storage units, which the people monitoring Garrido would not search. One of them, tiny, completely soundproof. He leads her inside and takes out handcuffs.
Said that they were the fuzzy kind, so they wouldn't hurt as bad. Whatever.
Behind your back?
Yeah. There was a pallet on the floor, and then he said he'd be back later. And he shut the studio or the soundproof door, and then the other door with the lock.
You heard
Remember
that
lock? Yeah. I can
Still?
still hear it consciously or when I'm awake. Just some sounds and smells, and this don't leave you.
He warns her there are dogs outside, Dobermans. They'll attack if she tries to escape. She notices there's one window covered with bars and a towel. He leaves.
At one point, you write that you get up and you take your teeth and you pull a towel
I
off.
wanted to see where I was. Yeah. I couldn't use my hands. And there was just weeds and some kind of fence.
Naked, in handcuffs, she drifts in and out of sleep.
Crying?
I didn't really want to, because then you can't wipe them away. Then you get all sticky and, that sounds awful, but, I tried not to cry because I couldn't wipe them away or, and then they get itchy. And
At one point, she made a note to remember the sound of the train so it would help her mom find her.
then later it was just listening to lawnmowers and airplanes, anything for human contact, I guess. I was so lonely. I felt so alone.
Have you seen Jaycee Dugard?
And 120 miles away, the mother who loves her and will never give up goes on television to make her first plea.
She's pretty, young, innocent child.
Friends have been searching all day and evening.
Police started searching the neighborhood.
Police set up a roadblock and go door to door. Her classmates are out in the streets holding up signs.
And it's time that she comes home.
And she has written that all alone that night, she decided to cling to something that would sustain her. There is moonlight streaming through the towel. It makes her think of her mother.
We would always sit on the porch and we would debate whether the full moon or the crescent moon was the better moon. I always liked the full moon and she liked the crescent. And just always made me think of her.
Do you remember the song you and your mom sang? Looking at the moon?
You are the moon. How does it go? I forget.
I love the moon and the moon
Sees me. I see the moon and the moon sees me. God bless the moon and God bless me.
Okay.
This is Philip Garrido. In a video obtained by ABC News from the prosecutors, he is singing one of the songs he wrote. He told everyone he was a musical genius on the verge of a big break. He also calls himself the witness, rambling on about the Bible, saying he was chosen to hear the voices of demon angels in the walls, in the ground, and that he will save the world. And doctors in the parole system know about him. He's even given medication, and everything he does is supposed to be monitored. His first arrest was 1972 for raping a 14-year-old girl who was too afraid to testify, so the case collapsed. 5 years later, in a rented storage container, he raped a woman for 8 hours who managed to escape. Because of her, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison, but he was released after a quarter of that sentence was served. Later, he would even receive a letter of commendation from the parole board heralding him for his personal accomplishments. And parole officers would visit him 60 times at his house, and though they knew his patterns, they never looked hard enough in the backyard to find a little girl. Jaycee Dugard, imprisoned 2 hours from her home. She didn't know it, but she was in Antioch on the outskirts of San Francisco. It is still that first week in June 1991. The 11-year-old girl, handcuffed, arms behind her back, is aching, skin rubbed raw. Philip Garrido is her only human contact, and sometimes he'll just sit and tell her funny stories or bring her fast food. Classic approach, we are told, for a pedophile.
I depended on him for bathroom, food, company.
You had no water, toothbrush,
No.
toilet.
No
What
toilet.
was the toilet?
Toilet was a bucket. Well, I had handcuffs on, so it was very difficult. So
She writes in the book she has no idea what he's planning to do. She's never heard about sexual abuse.
Had you ever heard the phrase?
nope, not into boys, other than, maybe the New Kids on the Block or something like that.
Sex was Ken and Barbie.
Yeah, laying together. That's what it was.
That's what you thought it was.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah.
In her book, what she has written is unflinching and detailed. I ask her why she decided to write it all. She said she wanted to do it for victims of sex abuse, who often keep secrets, along with fear and shame.
Why not look at it? Stare it down until it can't scare you anymore.
She worked on all this with her therapist, Rebecca Bailey, who specializes in family reunification after trauma.
It is not her shame. Those things happen to her. They're not who she is.
This is the studio. That's where it was first taken. I didn't want there to be any more secrets.
As we continue, we will not bring you all the details in the book. We said she should only say out loud what she wants to say. She tells us right after she's kidnapped, he forces her into a shower with him, and she's never seen an unclothed man again She's just 11. It will be at the end of that first week that he brings her a milkshake.
Comes in with the milkshake, and I was getting used to him coming in. But he said things were going to be different
This time.
She is still in handcuffs the first time he rapes her.
I remember crying, but they were silent. Just tears running down my face.
She tells us she remembers seeing a trail of ants make their way toward the untouched milkshake. It will continue day after day.
Before I ate meals. It felt like every day. I mean, like I said, time is hard to judge, but there's a switch that I had to shut off.
Just go someplace else.
Just went someplace else.
At one point, he brings in a TV, though she can't see the news. She doesn't know her mother is now asking neighbors to keep their porch lights on in case she comes home.
Lifts my spirit real high. I'm overwhelmed. This is more than I can ask for. Give me a light. This is going to bring her home. I know it.
In the beginning, you could only see QVC.
Yeah, I would fall asleep to the sound of jewelry being sold.
And 250 in the white. This is a
But at least it was
already very popular.
talking.
So those busy phones will say hello to Selena.
And she tells us she thinks it was almost a month and a half later when Garrido takes her out of that soundproof storage unit into a room next door.
Over here, the blue building.
He tells her the demon angels, those voices he hears, had let him take her because she will help him with his sexual problems. And again, this is a convicted sex offender still in the care of court-mandated doctors. He had one appointment 3 days before he kidnapped Jaycee, and another appointment 4 days after. But he tells her society has ignored him, and that's why she is there.
That's what I was here for. Yeah, that's why he got me.
And if you do it, you would keep other little girls safe? Because
yeah,
it would
he was always, protect other people. So he didn't have to go out and do this to anybody else.
Did you believe that you were protecting other little girls?
I think I did. I think on some level I did, yeah.
He put that stun gun out on a table where she could see it. He got out equipment for drugs, and so began what he would call runs, drug-filled binges for days. In the book, she writes what he forced her to do. This is what she is comfortable telling us.
Well, they were very long. Usually started out with, he would dress me up for hours because he was taking methamphetamines and speed. He called it speed. He would get focused on one thing for long periods of time. And then it usually went to him with his little books of cutouts that he would cut out for hours and paste on little girls from magazines and porno magazines. I mean, it didn't make sense to me at all, but that's what he did.
And then sometimes he would make her listen for the voices, the ones he says he can hear in the walls. And when it's over, she says, he sobs.
He would apologize and...
That's the confusing part.
Beg your forgiveness.
Tell me what an awful man he was. And here I am trying to, feeling, hurting, because it hurt, wanting it to stop. And I have to comfort him.
After the tears, to keep her compliant, more threats. Once he said he'd sell her to people who would lock her in a cage. She said she was shaking.
He would come up with
the unknown that would always be more terrifying than what I knew. After, I got used to I don't know if you ever get used to that, but you can get used to things. Once I got used to that, it would be the unknown thing that was more terrifying than actually keeping with the runs and doing something that was, at least I knew what was going to happen. It's when he would invent new things and
all night long you would think that's what he was going to do to you.
I begged him, I'll do it better, I'll be good, because it was the unknown that was terrifying.
Did you think it was going to be the rest of your life?
It sounded like it.
And as the first month passes, remember, there's no way she can run. The handcuffs, the bolted doors, the dogs outside.
There was not a day that I didn't cry. I felt like there would never, ever be a day that I wouldn't cry again. And then after a while, I told myself I can't cry anymore.
What's the most haunting memory?
That lock, hearing the lock. I know I said that earlier, but for some reason that. And the bed, it was a squeaky bed. Squeaky pull-out bed. I guess the noise, the sounds. It's weird what sticks in your head, but sounds.
How did you stay sane?
I don't know. I was still alive. There was still hope. Still hope.
I'm trying to imagine how you are coping. I'm trying to imagine.
I don't know. I can't imagine being beaten to death, you know. And you can't imagine being kidnapped and raped, you know. So it's just, you just do what you have to do to survive.
And again, she says she is telling her story so that the thousands of other survivors of sexual abuse know that survival is your strength, not your shame.
It's that T.S. Eliot quote you have in your book.
Yeah, I had
about hope.
Thinking I have to hope in something. Hope was in the wrong place. But sometimes you just have to hold on to any kind of hope to survive.
As we resume, 7 months have now passed since Jaycee Dugard was taken from her mother, her sister, her life. That field trip she worried about, long over. Her 5th grade classmates have now graduated elementary school. Her mother is still pleading with everyone to keep on searching for her.
She is coming home. That gives me a lot of hope, a lot of optimism. Somebody's, feeding me dreams for a reason.
And by the way, her biological father had left the family, was never in Jaycee's life. There was a stepfather, but Jaycee was not close to him. 2 hours away, Jaycee is now being moved back and forth from the soundproof room to the larger room where she's handcuffed to the bed. Her only company, a spider, she names Bianca. Then one day, Garrido says there's someone he wants her to meet, and he wants them to be friends.
She enters the picture.
Yes.
Nancy.
Nancy Garrido is his wife. They had met in a visiting room at Leavenworth Prison. He, a prisoner there, she visiting her uncle. She, a Jehovah's Witness. He talked to her about the Bible. She was also in the car the day Jaycee Dugard was stun gunned and kidnapped. She was the one who pinned the little girl to the floor with her legs. Now, she shows up bringing a purple bear and a Barbie doll and chocolate milk.
I was so lonely. I craved any kind of attention. I wanted her to like me.
Because?
Because I felt like if she doesn't like me, then I'm going to get in trouble.
Jaycee remembers using the cartons from the chocolate milk to try to make furniture for her Barbie.
Nancy starts bringing me meals. There's a TV over there, so I could watch TV as long as it was low.
She told you she was sorry what they'd done to you?
Mm-hmm. She told me that. She cried too. In some ways, she's just as manipulative because she would cry and say, I can't believe that he did this. I wish he would have got a headache that morning that he took you.
And she knew everything.
Yeah, she knew everything. Everything. What makes somebody do that in the first place? Take somebody else's child just to satisfy your husband. I don't know, she's just as evil as Philip. Very twisted minds.
Twisted.
Okay. Does it say record still?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Remember the video obtained by the prosecutors of Philip Garrido playing his guitar? Again, he is a convicted sex offender supposed to be monitored, at times even wearing an ankle bracelet. But here, he is singing at a children's playground. And holding the camera, his wife Nancy, who will furtively move it off him away to gather secret pictures of little girls playing.
You got me real good?
Yes.
I can see you really good.
As we've said, later tonight, we will go to law enforcement and seek answers. When they are arrested, Nancy Garrido will also be charged with kidnapping and rape by force. We remember a moment from the courtroom. Philip Garrido, Nancy Garrido, in a jury box separated by their lawyers. And suddenly he looks at her and mouths the words, "I love you." Even as she kept scouting little girls for her pedophile husband, Nancy Garrido, like him, would alternate motherly concern with coldness and cruelty.
Jealous.
Very jealous of me for some reason. Like I wanted her husband to rape me. Very jealous and sick.
She worked by day as an aide in a nursing home, but when Philip Garrido vanished for a month, she replaced him as jailer.
A whole month. He's gone.
Yeah, she said that he was on an island with a friend, but he was actually sent back to prison.
For failing a drug test.
So it's the two of you.
Yeah. She would lock us in every night. She wanted to watch this scary movie called The Unborn. It was awful. It was very scary. And then she would leave in the morning and lock the door.
And the two of them also worked together to use Jaycee's love of animals to manipulate the little girl, giving her kittens that would then mysteriously vanish.
Well, it was Tigger, and then it was Snowy, who, I don't know what happened to her.
Another kitten was named Eclipse, a girl kitten. Jaycee loved so much she asked for paper and a pen to make a little diary. She writes how grateful she was for the little kitten and how much the Garridos told her they paid for her, adding, "Last night I started to cry and she heard me. She came to me and sat next to me, and after that I felt a little better. She means more to me than my own life. I see her love for me." And every entry is studied with a little heart on a string, like a balloon. The little kitten Eclipse would also disappear during one of Garrido's drug-filled runs. And when Garrido happened to notice that the little girl had signed her name, Jaycee, on that journal,
I actually wrote my name, and I tore it out when he saw it.
Because he said you had to.
Yes, and that was the last time.
the last time for 18 years she'd be allowed to write or speak her name. Losing her name and fighting to hold on to the memory of the face that is keeping her alive, her mom.
I wanted to see her more than anything.
And worried you'd forget.
Worried I'd forget what she looked like or what she sounded like. Would she forget me?
Would she want you after this?
Yep. Being a mom now, I know that she never forgot about me because I could never forget about my kids. But, when you're a kid and you think you're easily forgettable.
And her mother, Terry, is also fighting to hold on as 1 year passes, and then a second. She's alone except for a couple of her friends who will quit their jobs to help her. On TV, she shows Jaycee's room untouched since her disappearance. It's where Terry says she goes to pray every night.
Even though she's not here, she's still in my heart.
And when 34 months have passed, 1,029 days since Jaycee Dugard was kidnapped, the handcuffs occasionally come off, but she's still always locked in a bolted room. One night, the Garridos are with her. They are watching the 10 Commandments on TV. For the first time, they bring her cooked food, corned beef and cabbage. It's Easter, 1994.
And then they tell you they think you're pregnant.
Yeah.
4.5 months pregnant, 13 years old. As we said, by now Jaycee Dugard has been in captivity for 1,029 days. A sketch artist tried to imagine the little girl now entering her teens, but those posters will weather and fall away. By now, her mother is holding rummage sales to raise money for private investigators. She is sending more than 1 million flyers across the United States while working and raising Jaycee's little sister Shayna. And 2 hours away in the backyard, Jaycee Dugard is pregnant, still bolted in, not allowed to go outside, sit in the sun, or see the sky. She learned the link between sex and pregnancy from TV.
Did you have any idea what it meant to give birth?
No, I had never seen it happen. There was this show that he would talk about a lot, Growing Up Baby or something like that. So I'd watch that, and he was watching birthing videos and just learned.
And he said that he would read up on it and he would do it?
Yeah.
She makes up little stories she tells to the baby growing in her stomach.
August 18th, 1994, you're how old?
14.
Having a baby in a backyard.
Yep, I did.
She is locked in, alone, watching Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman when she feels the first sharp pain.
You're in labor and there's nobody there.
I didn't know I was
You're
in
locked
labor,
up.
but yeah, I was still, locked at that time. Just scared. It was terrible pain. Didn't know what was going on. Hadn't seen anybody all day.
She will be in labor all by herself for hours. Finally, the Garridos return. They give her codeine. The labor continues for another 12 hours, and with a complication. The baby is still inside her. Philip Garrido uses his hand to unwrap the umbilical cord from the baby's neck.
He had seen that on one of the shows, that's what you do, because she wasn't coming out. So he did that, and she came out, and then I saw her. She was beautiful. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Had somebody that was mine. I wasn't alone. And I knew I could never let anything happen to her. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I did.
And when Garrido takes the baby,
he held her in a chair and prayed that he would never hurt her.
Was it your terror?
Yeah, every day.
3 years later, another birth in the backyard.
I have a second person to love and to love me, and maybe another little piece of my mom to hang on to. I wanted to see her more than anything. Every day, in the beginning, like I said, I would cry every day and be hardest when I would think about her and what she was doing, and then trying to convince myself she was better without me. Easier, she had Shayna, but I wanted her.
And for the next 2 years, as doctors profess to monitor Garrido, along with all those parole officers who come into the house, Dugard is in the back, locked up in a room with 2 little girls, taking care of them with what she's learned from TV, breastfeeding first one, then the other. Garrido, she writes in the book, still erupts with anger, inexplicable rants about her behavior, which she tries to keep altering to avoid his moods. At other times, long lectures about the Bible, how he is the chosen one. And he continues to make her listen to voices he says he hears with a machine he has built using plastic cups.
What are bionic ears?
It's like a sound amplifier, and I would have to listen to the air conditioner, sit with the headphones for hours, tuning in, he called it.
Finally, when she's a young mother, Garrido builds a fence, walling off the entire backyard. He gives her a little tent outside. She writes about the first time she can walk outside. I can feel it, the sun warm on my face. And experts who write about survival say nearly all those who make it find some way to create meaning in the reality of their days, amid the trash and squalor.
You planted little flowers.
Yeah, I like to garden.
This was your garden?
Yep.
Even little flowers inside the tent. And then the girl who once loved books and stories decides for her girls to create a little school.
We had math, social studies, English, and history was the other one. And teach him the best I could. I only had a 5th grade education, so my math wasn't my strongest suit.
In a secret act of defiance, she saves little scraps of paper and begins writing a journal she manages to hide from him. Sometimes it still sounds like a child.
I would live in my own world, and I would have superpowers, like the power to heal people and animals.
Sometimes she wonders if out in the world there could be a soulmate for her.
The physical abuse was all I knew. But
right.
Things that I saw on television were so different. And, I don't know.
Look at this. I would search the world for the top teachers if I could get out of here, and psychologists and doctors. And I would organize, and we would open a free clinic for homeless people to come and interact with animals.
Time on my hands to think about things I would do.
And then one day, Garrido tells her they need to make Nancy feel better. He has decided that from now on the girls will call Nancy their mom. They will be told that Jaycee is just their sister. At another point, she writes in her journal, I want to be free to come and go as I please, free to say I have a family, free.
Free to have my family.
Okay, why is this door blocked?
For the first time ever, you're seeing a video obtained by prosecutors of a parole officer going through the house of convicted sex offender Philip Garrido. The voice you hear is Nancy Garrido taunting the officer.
What does a parole agent do for his parolee? Mr.
Ma'am, you can come in office and we'll discuss that.
And what you should know is Jaycee Dugard is just 30 feet away. On another occasion, Garrido actually lets her into the house. She even has a casual exchange with a parole officer, not daring to say who she was.
I actually talked to one of the agents, and the agent proceeded to give Philip his urine test and left. This made me feel like didn't really care.
And as we said, 60 times parole officers will come to Garrido's house and not question what they are seeing. Even when a neighbor called 911 once and said she had seen girls in his yard, nothing was done. At another point, Garrido once had a court-mandated ankle bracelet. If officials had studied the data which tracks exact movement, they would have seen this, a handful of blue dots in the house. But look at all those red dots. What was he doing all that time? In the yard. Chris Cuomo investigates their inaction later. And so more and more years go by, summers, fall, winter. Jaycee Dugard's little friends from the 5th grade are now entering college. She has been told to take a new name.
Who were you?
I was Alyssa. I liked the actor Alyssa Milano on Who's the Boss, and I couldn't be Jaycee, so I picked another name.
And by 1999, the Garridos feel so confident no one will find her, they all go out to a kind of carnival called the Corn Fest. We got actual news photos of the crowd that day. She's 19, 40,000 people are there. Had any of them heard of her or seen the flyers? We pored over them, hoping she'd be there in plain sight. We didn't find her.
And who were you inside when you would be out among people?
Hiding. Afraid I'm going to make a mistake and do something wrong.
And no one seemed to see you?
No, nobody noticed.
She said by then she'd gained weight and her blonde hair had turned brown.
Did you know that there was an artist's attempt to imagine what you looked like? What do you think?
I don't think it looks like me.
Which brings us to one of the great mysteries of human behavior. If she was out in the world, why didn't she run? What was the psychological stun gun that paralyzed her action, even when the doors were unlocked?
Classic manipulation, being responsible for everything from time to food to human companionship.
And you see it over and over again.
You do see it over and over again.
Her therapist, Rebecca Bailey, says what happened is not Stockholm Syndrome, but a kind of coping, an adaptive helplessness. It comes with years of abuse, when the emotional handcuffs become stronger than the tangible ones in the hands of a predatory expert.
So he was a mastermind, and in his narcissism was able to weave people into believing his stories. He had a prior rape in which he had held the woman captive and was able to talk a police officer away from the site, convinced initially the police officer that this naked woman screaming was in fact enjoying being with him.
After the children were born, Garrido stopped the sexual relationship.
Did you think of him as father?
Never. Father to the kids. No,
Dictator?
just somebody who always knew what to do. I depended on him for everything.
And it seems you can almost see something in her face when she tries to go back to that time, searching for reasons.
Did you think about taking those two girls and running?
I'm sure I did. But it wasn't something I felt I could do.
Because?
The situation felt like it wasn't an option. I don't know how else to explain it. There was no leaving.
What would it have taken for you to believe you could leave?
I've asked myself that question many times. The mind manipulation, plus the physical abuse I suffered in the beginning. There was no leaving. Maybe if one of the girls were being hurt.
And everyone who thinks that maternal impulse would just scoop them up to run doesn't.
They were safe. I was being told that the outside world was dangerous.
Ironically enough, filled with rapists and pedophiles.
Yes, and pedophiles. I couldn't protect them out there. It's like what I knew was safe, the unknown that was out there was terrifying, especially when thinking about the girls.
You can see it in her journal. She writes about her fear and wonders how she could live or survive on the outside.
He helped her to believe he was the only person that she could be safe with. She had parole officers coming to the house.
Right now I'm searching the house.
And at some point, it's logical to assume you would say, does anybody even know that I'm here or even care that I'm here?
And even when she is now in her 20s, Garrido has started a printing business. Jaycee is designing cards and invitation on a computer with internet. Her mother on her mind, her hands still unable to move.
He said that the computer keeps track of all that stuff, and he could see that.
A
couple of clicks.
A couple of clicks. But you never.
I never did it. Something always held me back. It was like I still had those handcuffs on.
Do you think you'll ever understand it? Why you didn't leave?
I don't think so.
In fact, after she was found, one of her first questions to her therapist was, is he crazy or am I? But the real miracle is that even as Jaycee Dugard was drowning in the undertow of Garrido and his control, she kept clinging fiercely to fading memories of mother, love, and hope.
She kept her hope. I don't know how she did that. How did I keep my hope? How did she keep her hope?
And look again at those little secret journals. She makes a list of dreams for the future.
First thing on the list.
See my mom.
See my mom.
And?
Ride in a hot air balloon.
At UC Berkeley, Philip Garrido is posting flyers about his wild religious beliefs all around the campus. With him, two young women who seem withdrawn, not happy. And after 18 years of law enforcement inertia, it would be campus police officers Lisa Campbell and Officer Allie Jacobs who say they simply didn't like what they saw.
One of the main things with me was the concern for the girls from a mother's standpoint. They weren't giving me any kind of sign that they were in trouble, but yet I felt that they were.
We knew that he was way out there, but we just didn't know what. We had no way of envisioning that it would be as big as it was.
The two women engaged Garrido in conversation, pretending to be interested in his delusional rant, and as soon as they could, ran to check who he was. They discovered in horror he is a sex offender.
And I'm thinking, he's on parole, he's huge, and he's got this record, this violent record. This is not going to be good.
Mother's instinct, female intuition, and cops just plain doing their job.
Just how incredible it is that they spoke up. about something they thought was wrong. Even if they would have been wrong, they still spoke up. And they saved us. Something I couldn't do for myself.
By this time, August 2009, Jaycee Dugard had long since stopped looking at the moon as she used to do with her mother. It was just too painful. But mysteriously, this night,
for some reason, I looked up and the moon was just bright and beautiful.
And 120 miles away, someone else has also grown 18 years older. 18 years of searching, suffering, struggling to hold on to hope. Jaycee Dugard's mother also looks up.
I had gone to my second job and got home about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I was tired and hungry and wore out. And I remember looking up at the moon, and then I said, "Okay, Jace, where are you? Where the hell are you?"
On August 26th, parole officers will summon Philip Garrido to come in. His family comes with him. But there's a problem. A frightened Dugard keeps sticking to the script Garrido has given her and keeps saying her name is Alyssa. The family is separated. The questioning continues. And surprisingly, late in the day, the first person to crack is Philip Garrido himself. For some reason, he confesses to kidnapping. It's not clear who. As he leaves, he first winks at her and then with dead eyes says, "Get a lawyer." And it's at this point a police officer takes her aside and asks her kindly, repeatedly, "Who are you? What's your name?" Here, from her book, is what happens next. She asked for my name again. I said I couldn't say it. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I told her I hadn't said it in 18 years. I told her I would write it down. And that's what I did. You are looking at the piece of paper on which Jaycee Dugard, shakily, finally, wrote the letters of her name. Jaycee Lee Dugard. It was, she says, like breaking an evil spell.
Your name.
My name. And it was like a piece of me came back.
And the flame that had been extinguished immediately reignites.
And they're like, "You can see your mom." And I'm like, I can see my mom? It was like a question to them, you know? I can?
You're at the office, the phone rings.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And then it was disbelief. I thought, no, you're joking. Don't do this to me. This is not funny. And I remember
you shouting,
"Oh, yeah.
Found her! My daughter!" And I was crying, you know, when you're crying and you can't speak. I just said, "Come quick." I remember saying, come quick.
And I remember telling you, "I'm coming, baby, I'm coming."
And then I said something about having babies. I didn't mean I had babies. I meant I had babies. I didn't know what to say. It was like unbelievable.
And when you heard she had daughters?
Babies. Oh, I'm thinking, babies, okay. I can deal with this.
Those babies were by now 15 and 11. The first night, the police officer let them stay in a motel. Jaycee wants her mother and sister so much she can't sleep.
I woke the girls up and I just said, "I'm so happy. I'm so happy." I'm like, I can't wait anymore. I don't care if they're sleeping. And so I ran down the hall. I forgot the motel key. I walked in. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
So happy. And stunningly, even now, 2 years later, with all that time lost, she insists life is too short for a moment of bitterness or rage.
I don't feel like I have this rage inside of me that's building.
Why not? How can you not?
Because I refuse to let him have that. He can't have me.
You mean if you felt rage, it would mean he had
won?
I think I have enough hate in my heart for the both of us. I hate that he took her life away.
And that makes me sad.
I'm sorry, baby. I hate that he stole her from me. He ripped out a piece of my heart. And He stole my baby. He stole your childhood. He stole your adolescence. He stole high school proms and pictures and memories and...
But he didn't get all of me.
No.
Still to come, Jaycee Dugard's victory, her daughters, her plans for the future, and the things we can all learn from how she healed. And when we come back,
They hear a report their kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all. It seems impossible to common sense.
Chris Cuomo takes up a mother's challenge to track down those who let this happen and to see if anything has changed.
Philip and Nancy Garrido are preparing to make a home movie you will not believe. It looks like the video will capture Philip Garrido playing a song on his guitar, but the guitar playing is just a ruse.
You need to make it look like you're pointing at me.
Look at where they are. Behind them is a playground. The Garridos are there to get shots of young children to feed Philip Garrido's sick appetites.
You got me real good?
Yes, I can see you really good.
This is going on despite the fact that Philip Garrido is supposedly under the watchful eye of federal parole officers for his past history of sexual violence. Our investigation reveals that this is a metaphor for decades of neglect by state and federal parole officials, basically allowing Philip Garrido to do as he pleased, including taking Jaycee Dugard prisoner. Pain felt most sharply by the one person who never lost sight of the situation, Jaycee's mom.
How could anybody with a heart or a conscience or a soul, for that matter, take an innocent child away from its mother?
This is the first time Terry Probin's searing words have been heard outside court. The pain and outrage she spoke directly to the Garridos, a mother who demands change.
I'm appalled. I'm disgusted, and something needs to change.
How much of the outrage goes to fixing this situation?
I think that's what it is. I think that's what fuels the fire, the outrage that I have, the anger that I have.
Garrido's terrifying career of sexual crimes begins in April 1972. Vietnam is raging. Students are protesting at UC Berkeley. And just 40 miles away in the small town of Antioch, 21-year-old Philip Garrido is waging a war of his own against young women, charged with drugging a 14-year-old girl and repeatedly raping her. The case is dropped after the victim refuses to testify, leaving Garrido free to strike again. And he does.
I just started screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God. That's him. That's the guy who kidnapped me."
News of Garrido's 2009 arrest brought back a flood of dark memories for Katie Calloway Hall. In November of 1976, Katie, then 25 years old, made the terrible mistake of giving a lift to Garrido outside South Lake Tahoe, California.
What I saw was a very tall, slender, normal-looking white male. He didn't look like what I thought a rapist would look like, obviously.
She was horribly wrong. Garrido hogtied and handcuffed Katie and drove her over 60 miles to Reno, Nevada, to a shed at this storage facility, where she says he repeatedly raped her over an 8-hour period.
He had just kind of a faraway look in his eyes. He looked at me like I was an object.
Katie was saved when a police officer on patrol noticed a broken lock on the shed and went inside to investigate. Garrido was soon sentenced to 50 years in federal prison for kidnapping and 5 years to life in Nevada for rape. Then came the first in a line of system failures. After serving just 11 of his 50-year sentence, Garrido is released after 2 parole examiners interview him for reportedly just 35 minutes. But Garrido wasn't a free man yet. He must serve his rape sentence in Nevada. But just 8 months later, a second failure. A Nevada parole board also decides to let Garrido out of prison. The reason? Not contributing to be a menace to the health, safety, and morals of society. These bizarre decisions were made decades ago. Our phone calls lead to dead ends or refusals to comment. So we followed the trail to State Prison Warden Brenda Burns, who signed off on Garrido's release. We found her in retirement, watering her lawn, and with little interest in the dreadful mistakes of the past.
We want to know why you released Philip Garrido so early from prison.
What the parole board does, they're the ones that release them, or their sentence term is finished, and that's what the situation is.
Were you surprised when you heard that he kidnapped Jaycee Dugard?
You know, I'm never surprised with the human nature, okay?
August 1988. Garrido walks out of prison a free man, but he's now supposedly under intense federal supervision as a high-risk offender. Parole is supposed to be release conditioned on regular check-ins at home and the parole office. Federal officials actually tour Garrido's house in Antioch, discovering the hidden backyard with structures like this, eerily similar to the shed where he raped Katie Hall. Yet no alarms went off. Just a month after that visit, in June of 1991, Garrido kidnaps 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard outside her home in South Lake Tahoe, California, and stashes her in the backyard in that same shed. Years pass. Jaycee gives birth to Garrido's 2 daughters, and yet parole officers remain oblivious. To the former Inspector General of California who investigated what went wrong with Garrido's parole, this is outrageous.
A federal parole agent had not only been in the backyard, but had been inside what Garrido was calling a soundstage or a soundproof room for recording. So they knew it was there, so the federal government knew.
Then, in March 1999, another major failure. After just 11 years of supervision, federal probation officials again give Garrido a huge break, cutting short his parole for, of all things, good behavior. In this letter, senior U.S. probation officer Mark Mesner thanks Garrido for his cooperation over this period of supervision and hopes that he will continue to do well. Mr. Mesner? We pay Mesner a visit to find out why Garrido's federal parole was cut short, given his violent and unstable background. Mr. Mesner, we just want to ask you a question. Mesner drives off without answering our questions. Could the federal government really ignore a situation like this? We sent letters to the head of the U.S. Parole Commission, to the United States Attorney General, to the Congressional Judiciary Committee, all asking why the federal government failed so miserably in its oversight of Philip Garrido. We received one response from the U.S. Parole Commission, which said it couldn't talk to us because it's still investigating the matter. But in fact, a federal investigation had already been completed months ago and was kept confidential. Fortunately, just this past Thursday, a U.S. district judge decided to release the report, which concluded Garrido's federal probation office did not follow commonly accepted supervision practices and had failed to adequately supervise Philip Garrido. Most chilling is this. One may fairly question whether Garrido could have been deterred from the horrendous acts attributed to him had his federal supervision been conducted properly. The report goes on to lay out necessary changes, but notes that previous recommendations had been ignored. They say, we're working on it. It takes time, doing our best. This is government stuff, you don't get it. We'll change on our own time.
Right place at the right time and having all those things is what, made this a happy ending.
Today we are joined by our...
Incredibly, after the arrest, California parole officials held a press conference to give themselves credit for cracking the case.
Very proud today to report the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's parole division for their work in solving the 18-year-old mystery of the disappearance of Jaycee Lee Dugard.
These officials declined requests to sit in the chair and answer our questions. However, the former Inspector General's report painted a very different picture of their actions, an abject failure that demanded not celebration, but major reform in California's parole system. People have described the Jaycee Dugard case for the state system as the 9/11 of Homeland Security, that this was the big thing that we should have seen coming. Now everything must change. Fair analysis?
I think it's a decent analogy. Clearly, it woke everyone up in the system that something like this could go on with an offender who I think largely we had ignored in law enforcement.
In the wake of the Dugard case, California says changes have been made in line with Shaw's report, such as criminal background information being available to all law enforcement and specific training for how to check thoroughly on all sex offenders. The state also paid $20 million to the Dugard family to settle a claim that it had failed to properly supervise Garrido. But money is not what the Dugards want. There was a settlement. Was that enough? Feel better now?
No.
What matters more? What can't you put a price on?
The 18 years that I lost with her, the crap she went through, nobody can put a price on that. It's not good enough that the Garridos are behind bars and will never see the light of day again. It's not good enough to tell me that change is coming. The battle's just begun.
Jaycee Dugard says you can redeem 18 years of stolen life and return from a chamber of horrors for body and mind. 2 years after her return, she says she knows it's better to laugh and cry than only cry. And as we said, she loves that it was her little sister Shayna, now 21, who had to teach her how to drive.
So tell me about learning to drive.
Oh
You
my
drive.
God, I do drive. I drive very safely. I go to park and I get out, I'm like, oh God, I did really good. And my mom's like, but look where you parked. And I was like taking 2 spaces.
She even makes a wry joke about her impossibly young skin, saying, how about years of no sun?
Yeah, yeah. It's how to preserve yourself. That's the kind of humor I use to, get by.
She continues to receive therapy from Rebecca Bailey, a specialist in family reunification. Bailey teaches one way to vanquish the past is gratitude for the pleasures of the present day.
Peanut sauce on it.
Sometimes it's just remembering that you get to make dinner with a family and have real food instead of fast food. And nature. Horses, she cares for them as part of her therapy. Mystical, tangible symbols of trust. Animals don't lie.
I mean, maybe I believe in a higher power, but I believe in nature and what we see around us as healing.
And yes, she is remarkable. I will give that. I'm confident that the community and the support that she has put around her since she has come out will carry her through whatever bumps in the road she hits. And I think she has a lot to teach all of us.
She's even creating a foundation with some of the money the state gave her to help all members of families after trauma.
When something happens, they don't think about the whole family, like there's a sister and there's a mother and there's other components. It's not just the victim.
If you go online, you can find the foundation with Jaycee's symbol, the pine cone charm.
Diane, yeah? I want to give you this, and I want you to wear it with happiness. I don't know what else to say.
You have to say a single word.
Good.
And the girl who loves words and metaphors says maybe a GED, even college. And I ask her about something she wrote in a journal when she was captive, something that ended with happily ever after.
I want to find love one day, the kind of love I read about. Still want that?
I don't know. I don't really think about it. I'm happy the way my life is now. I mean, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'll still be happy.
But it doesn't seem impossible after what you've been through.
No, it doesn't seem impossible.
I think that the prediction of the future is not in my job, but I will tell you that whether there's a man in her life or not, this woman will love fully in her life. He has certainly infused fear, and he has certainly, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there are things that he has taken away from her that she will never have back or get back.
But she has her daughters whom she loves. She is very protective of their privacy. And will say only that they're healthy, happy, wonderful students. In fact, so confident heading off to school, one of them said to her, "Mom, you're making me nervous." She also says they can make their own decision about whether to read the book, but they know what happened.
Their dad did strange things and they knew it. They lived that way for so long that I don't really think it was that big of a shock to them because they knew their dad.
It's interesting to hear you call him their dad.
He is what he is.
When you see his expressions, is it startling in your daughters?
Surprisingly, I don't see it in them. I see my mom. I see me. I don't see him.
But she admits at the beginning she was worried that her own mom would have trouble with children fathered by that man.
I don't see him in my granddaughters. No, it is not there. They are who they are, and they are so beautiful. And I'm very proud to be a grandma. I love those girls with all my heart. You don't even have to ask that, baby. No, they're mine.
And where are the Garridos? They pled guilty. Nancy Garrido sentenced to 34 years. Jaycee Dugard went to see her, was unmoved by her tears, and closed the door on her forever. And as we said, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years. He sits on the same prison row as Charles Manson, in isolation in a tiny cell with a window covered with bars.
If he is watching this, if he sees this, is there anything more either of you wants to say to him?
Can't steal anything else. Can't steal our love for each other.
No.
Couldn't take that away.
So in the battle between good and evil,
good wins.
Good wins.
Yep.
Before we left, Terry wanted to send a message to you about a morning more than 18 years ago when her little girl asked for a morning kiss.
I had been late to work 3 Monday mornings in a row, and I was focused on myself, trying to get myself out that door so I wouldn't be late for work. And I chose not to go in and kiss my girls goodbye that morning, wanting to be on time. And for 18 years, I kicked myself for not kissing that baby goodbye.
How could you have known, though? You can't beat yourself up about that.
No. But it's a good lesson. You know, take a minute for your kids. Do that extra thing that may be an inconvenience to you, but is important to them.
I am so lucky and blessed for all the wonderful things that I do have. Life is too short to think about all the things you don't have. I had my girls to give me strength and my cats to keep me warm at night, and perhaps deep inside, the dim hope of seeing my mom again. Even if it is just one thing or person you have to be thankful for, that is enough.
Are you excited? Yeah. Are you scared? Yeah.
And out of her journals in captivity, that list of impossible dreams, her final words: live each day to the fullest, whatever life brings you.
This is so peaceful.